about 400,000 children in the United States under the foster care system. 50% of foster homes close within a year. We know about this very well as we are foster parents ourselves. Hello, I'm Eliezer Marte.
I'm Eric Martinez.
Thank you so much for watching us, for listening to us on this episode of Daddies on Duty. And with us, we have Executive Director of New Jersey Angels, Kim Swilpa. Thank you so much for being here. I said it right.
Good job.
I want to make sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about fostering kids in the United States. As you know, Kim, because we had a very long conversation when we first met. We are foster parents. We've been foster parents for 4 years. And New Jersey Angels is an organization that I want you to talk to us about what the organization does before we get into the topic of navigating the fostering system and the burnout of fostering itself.
Yes. So, first of all, thank you for having me today. New Jersey Angels is a chapter of a nonprofit that started in Austin, Texas. There are 19 chapters across 14 states. Here in New Jersey, we are here for 4 years. Next year, we'll be celebrating our 5th year. But we get involved as an organization once a child enters foster care. And we have 2 programs. We have the Love Box program that wraps around families who are fostering. And then we have our Dare to Dream program, which is a mentorship program for youth who are experiencing foster care.
All right. Eric, when I was talking at the beginning about the statistics, and we spoke about it earlier, these are numbers that we actually can say we feel those numbers ourselves. And one of the questions that I told you I wanted to ask Kim was, why the burnout of being foster parents? Why is the system failing when it comes to that?
Before you answer that, Kim.
Yeah, he always has something to say before the question.
Before you answer that, Kim, I would say we have an expert here, which is Kim, but I feel like we're experts now in being foster parents. So I want to change the dynamic around a bit.
Change it around.
Right? Mm-hmm. So let's just say that you're promoting. Let's just say you're organizing an event and you're looking for new foster parents, and then you come across these 2 handsome individuals who are clearly burned out, right? Because we are, because we've even said time and time over and over again, we're closing our doors tomorrow because the system is designed and works against the actual foster parents. Mm-hmm. And you say, you know what? You should do it. Here's why. Why would that be?
Because kids need good foster homes. And you guys are clearly good foster parents. I listened to your podcast before I came on about your fostering journey. And we need more homes that do this good work because it's so hard. And I think it's really about educating people about how hard it is to begin with. And meeting with people who are doing it successfully. Yes, there's burnout, but there's organizations like the Angels Network that is there to support you because it is so hard. And unless you're in it, you don't know. Mm-hmm. And what we do is we find out what you need. So we just had someone recently sign up for our program before they even have a child in their home. That to me shows that they're understanding it. They're going to need support. What does that look like? And it's finding organizations like the Angels, like other resources, because the state just does not give you enough to be successful. So it's finding organizations and your resources, I think, before you start and understanding the trauma that the children are going through and just being prepared and having support and community around you. That's what it's really
What are you discovering through New Jersey Angels about the needs of foster parents and the foster system itself? What are those needs?
Well, the needs are different for everyone. So we're not one size fits all. Every single family has a different need. I had a family that she was fostering an infant, and she has biological children, 2 boys. And she said, I've got a handle on the infant, but I'd love someone that's going to come spend time as a special thing for my boys. So we had a gentleman who had just had kids of his own. He wanted to give back to the community, and he would show up and he'd play chess with them. He was teaching them how to do calligraphy. They were very artsy. So he would show up once a month and just spend time with the boys so that foster mom felt like she can spend time with the infant without feeling guilty about, not spending enough time with her biological children, because we want her to feel supported, whatever that looks like. Her needs changed. So the child that she was fostering moved on to another home. And she then was fostering toddlers. she had a different love box group because now that has ended their, we like them to be long-term relationships, but for this particular case, it ended, and she wound up getting a group of women who would take the toddlers out for the day so that she could spend time with her biological boys. It was their day. So that it's wrapping around the entire family, seeing what it looks like for each individual family, and then making sure that we are giving them what they need through our volunteers. So
Yeah, so it's it's interesting, and I wish we would have came across like your organization before, because we didn't have access, and I'm not saying that we went into this for the wrong reasons, because we didn't. We generally, the number one reason, we did want to help someone, and then also from a selfish standpoint, we also wanted to start our own family, and I think there were some blurred lines there. Yes, absolutely, because there's always that hope that okay, things might end up differently, and I think time has taught us so many different things and has opened our eyes to the way that the system actually works, but also spending time
Or doesn't work.
But also living with these kids, you start also, I don't know, aside from empathy, but just living life through their eyes too, and it's like you suffer with them. But I think what's been the most anguish and the most frustrating thing for us is feeling that we've been put aside as if we're, it's like, we constantly hear, well, they're not your kids, okay, we know they're not our kids, but they're with us, and we're the ones dealing with the day to day. And then it took, for me personally, years to put my feelings aside and really say, you know what, they're not my kids, but they're not my biological kids, but this is also your job, and you're not doing your job. And I think we should all do our part and ensure that whatever the best outcome here is, we do this in their best interest. And we hear that all the time in fostering, best interest of the child, best interest of the child. But that's never really the case because of the way that the system is designed. And I used to joke around and say this, and they used to get very upset at court. I said, this is not the vision of protective child services. This is parent services, not not for the child. And I see like for us, burnout, it's different. It's different. It really cripples you when it comes to dealing with the kids, our own personal life, our relationship, and so on. And so my question to you is, how do you prepare to foster? Because I think most people go into it with this false expectation and like this reality that you're getting what you want. And even though it's crazy, when you go through the training, and I can speak from experience, we did get the textbook child, meaning children. So what was in the textbook, that's exactly what we got. But it's still different when you get them in real life.
One thing
form.
is what you read.
Yeah.
Another thing is what you experience on a
So
day
it's
to
like,
day.
so how do you prepare for that, and how do you navigate the troubling waters? That's number one. And then number two, I do also understand, and I know this is like a loaded question. I understand too that in New Jersey is a little different. We went from two extremes. They went from the reunification being the primary goal after Governor Chris Christie, this whole thing. But also it's like, we're not the only ones navigating burnout. They're also the workers. And I also now feel for them as well, that they also have their own challenges too.
So let's break it down. First part of the question.
How do you prepare to deal with because I think a lot of issues can be avoided if you have a true, and again, I'm not accusing them because the textbook was true, but how do you truly prepare someone for fostering?
Yeah, what are you getting from families out there?
it's hard. It's hard. It's emotionally draining because you love these children. The second they walk into your door, it's really, you see that child, they need something. You are there. You've gone through this training. They've been through trauma. And it's not as simple this way, but we talk about that often. We, as an organization, are there to support that parent in whatever way they need. It could be talking to them about this. And it could be, there is a story that's told, because we get together as a group through the national network. And one story was told how one of the volunteers was on the floor in the bathroom with her arms around the woman who was fostering, who just lost her children back to the biological family. 2 or 3 years she had them. I don't know the exact details, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
That is the reality of it. And what there was also a few videos that I watched when I first joined the organization, and one of the things is trying to think of it as you're carrying them with love on their journey. Easier said than done, and you're bringing them to the next space. You've surrounded them with love, and that's all you can do. But it doesn't make it easier as a foster parent. It does not, because you get. I mean, I used to own a child care facility at one point, and I saw a child that he had been through 3 different homes in 2 years. They were all ready to adopt. The biological mother he was returned to the biological mother. A year later, he was returned back to the foster care system.
I know that's what makes it the most challenging.
It's very challenging. And I don't know the answer to that. I do know the answer is loving the child when they're in your home and just making them feel like they're part of your family for however long that is. But it's so hard. So many people I talk to, they're like, I could never do that. It would destroy
We hear that.
me.
We hear that all the time.
Yes,
From the workers too.
Yes.
I don't know how you guys do it. We could never do it.
Yes, it would destroy me. It would destroy me. And I did listen to your podcast earlier, and you said if your child went back to the biological family, that you would want to be a part of that. I think that's the best case scenario. Do you know what I mean? Because these, parents who lose their children, they don't wake up one day and go, I'm going to be, in this horrible position where I lose my kids. So you have empathy for them. You feel for them. You want them to, do whatever it is they need to do and get their children
But not
back.
every parent gets to do it. Not
No.
every parent gets to get their child back, and not every parent could do it. They don't have the ability. They don't have, there are a lot of factors determining whether a mom or a dad could get their child back. And in a lot of the cases, they can't.
Yes. And that's a difficulty too, because that was one of the things that we talked about with this, what you hear about is now let's give those parents resources, right? Instead of just pulling children out of their home very quickly, and then it make them really hard to get your child back. And it could be financial. I mean, a lot of it starts with poverty, people who lose their children. It's sometimes working 2 jobs, and they had to leave their 13-year-old with their 10-year-old with their 4-year-old. The neighbor, something happens, the neighbor calls, and now their children are gone. And they're just someone trying to, work 2 jobs, make it. It's difficult.
And
financially.
what makes things like in extreme, well, not in extreme cases, what makes things very difficult too is when I guess every foster parent probably feels like, oh, the kids shouldn't go back, because you do know the story. You're privy to the story. In some cases, and we've met with other foster parents too, where we're like, okay, well, and there are some cases where it was a temporary thing, they should be reunited, and then there's a whole thing they should never be reunited.
Well,
but now the system is designed to reunite them, and I do feel that sometimes parents is their way of asking for help, that I can't really take care of this child, but I'm never going to say that, and I think in our experience, and I think as it speaks to burnout, we've lived that and I see where a lot of parents do burn out, where we do have to also, and it gets a little complicated, where do you say, I have to also look out for my best interest without feeling selfish, and saying that you're now saying, you're looking out for yourself and your family and forgetting that there's another individual and human being that needs that help. Because you've kind of seen, most people don't realize that when you do foster, you're opening the door to seeing the worst in humanity. And I don't think we do get a lot of credit for that. When you read these evaluations, when you read these reports, that you can see wow, how can you? Because most humans would never do that to their child. Yeah. Or never could even fathom or imagine that this can actually happen to someone, and then to you're living that, and it's unreal.
And then and add
and then,
to that.
Wait, sorry. And then when you're looking at something where you have to separate yourself from that, you feel like you're abandoning someone because it's what's best for you. And you're we were faced with that decision a few times where now I'll give you a good example. We're saying, even with our child now, we're saying, we have our daughter who's now attached to our son.
Very attached.
Very attached. So what if he is reunified? Whose life is more important, but who should we look out for? Should we look out for our daughter, or should we look out for we consider him our son? Who do we choose?
Well, they keep on telling us that he's not our son yet. So, he's just here until something could happen, right? Because we
Yeah.
get that all the time, as you mentioned. But adding to that is the number that I gave at the beginning. 50% of homes close within the first year of fostering. And I mean, we talked about it so many times. We're like, this is the last day, and we're like, no, we cannot do this. We're not going to do this for him. We can never close our home until we know what's going to
Yeah.
happen to our,
Well,
foster son.
we've been invested, and thankfully, and I'm not. And again, we were, we have neighbors who've done fostering, and we've had some who've closed and who've remained open, and they've all had different experiences. They say, you know what's best for your family. What was best for us is we can never do that to him.
Now, are we going
Now,
to do this again?
When we do it again, it's
Unfortunately.
we don't see that. We can't see that. I mean, we can't say never because we don't know what the future holds. But now I will tell you this: we have lived every experience possible. We went through we actually lived reunification, which I think that most people don't know what that is. But I will explain it to you. It's when a child's reunified with their biological parents, whether you agree with it or not. And most studies do suggest that children do fare out better when they are reunified. I disagree, and I disagree. I think in some cases yes, and I think in some cases no. I think I think every case is different. I think the best thing you can do, and I think and I use as an example during court. I said, listen, there are mothers out there. This is during the time when Trump's first term, when we're looking at immigration. There are mothers out there who are tossing their kids over the wall because they want what's better for them. But they're willing to separate for their own betterment. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that, So when we had our first, reunification, it's like you're grieving a death. I mean, it took me time. It took us time. I mean, it took our family time to heal. Our friends. Yeah. Like I remember even calling our moms. Our moms were crying. Yeah. Like everyone was crying. Like, oh man, I can't believe that this would actually happen. I mean, I tear up even thinking about it. But anyway.
And then that's one of the reasons a lot of people end up closing their home.
Yeah.
So what do you see as the factors that are leading to these homes being closed, right? That they decide not to continue being foster parents.
It's just support in any way, and emotional support. Emotional support is huge. And unfortunately, the state doesn't have enough resources either to do that. And that's, I think, part of the reason they don't have the opportunity. And I'm not an expert in what happens in the state, but they don't have the opportunity to really dive in. Or there's sometimes where they're looking at certain edicts that come down. Let's reunify. It's numbers. Sometimes it's numbers game, which is, you want to get as many reunifications as possible. Is that the best thing for the child? And really diving in. You have other organizations that really help with that as well, like Law Guardian or CASA. They really try to find out what's best for that child. From our perspective as an organization, it's emotionally supporting, physically supporting, babysitting. Those are the types of things that we do as an organization just for that family.
And that can make such a huge difference.
Yeah, can't make
it
the
makes
change.
a big difference.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, we can't make a change in what's going on in the state. That's not,
You can't
our
change the
role.
system.
Yes. But
But
what we
you
can
can
do
change
is,
the day to day.
and the experience. So we want to change the experience of foster care. We want to come to families like this parent that has come to us before she even has a child. She wants to see what we do, what we're all about, how we can help her, whatever that looks like. And like I said, it's different for every family.
I think it's a beautiful thing what you guys are doing. And I'm going to highlight to you an example of what support systems look like, and even for families who are even considering. We have our son. He's had some challenges even at school before he started school with daycare, and even with daycare, where I never thought it was possible, to get kicked out of daycare. Now, full disclosure, it's not just foster kids. Apparently, this is very common across the board.
I owned a child care.
Yeah.
We had a
When I brought this up at work, my coworkers were like, "Oh, my kid's been kicked out like 2 or 3 daycares." I'm like, "Oh, I guess it's not just my kid."
Yeah.
But even something as simple when you were talking, well, that's your problem, and I'm like, well, no, well, if he's in your custody, and it's alarming for you as the foster parents now. I'm not saying that it's different if it was your child, meaning that it was your biological child. But there is a difference because you've been dealing with this for some time. You're kind of prepped for it. You know, when you get a foster child, you have to understand that this is kind of like your world it flips upside down. Like I remember like it was just yesterday when those kids walked through that door.
Everything changed.
I was sitting at like brunch somewhere with like my mom and like my aunt.
Oh yeah.
And we were told that these kids might come like 2 to 3 months back every single day. They're like, oh, and I was like, I forgot about it. And they're like, oh, they're coming like today. After they're coming, I was like, oh, I guess I gotta go home. Like, okay, like, do we have a crib? Do we have this?
We rushed to the store.
Like, we rushed to the store, and we were so like jolly. You know, it was so different. But anyway, you're not prepped and prepared. But your current state is not the same as it will be tomorrow. Whether you're prepared or not prepared, it's happening.
Yeah.
But also your emotional intelligence and what you think you know and don't know, you're not prepared. I mean, we have grown to anticipate and address needs of an individual who, you know, and you really, again, you understand and address a human in a different way that most people don't understand, right? But it is interesting to see how, you know, how that whole thing works and how the support is not there for the parents itself. Because when we went back to the division and to everyone else, they would tell you, okay, well, that's your problem.
Yeah, because
And we're like, well, we have to go to work tomorrow. Like, how do we figure this out? You know?
Because one of the main concerns that we hear and that we have experienced in talking to other foster parents is that there isn't really that much support for foster parents. It's just, this is what you get, this is what it is. You're not the biological parents, right? That's all you get. So then a lot of these foster parents, they say, well, this is why the burnout happens, right? Because they cannot have anything that is supporting them. And then how do we navigate, I guess, supporting these parents, supporting those that decide to become foster dads?
Well, not navigate, what resources are out there? Because I will tell you this, and I'm sure you're familiar with this too. When you speak to the homes, meaning the licensing individuals who license the foster parents, they'll give you these trainings and umbrella, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with if you're in like foster care. But what other services? Because you don't know as a foster parent what is out there for foster parents that they can reach out to outside of groups. What, like, I don't know if you have any insight. What else is out there?
Well, we do get a lot of resources that we put together for our parents, where we have the sheet on our website where we say, here's different resources. And for instance, and it also happens with volunteers. So I had a volunteer one time who was working with a family, and she was having difficulty with the healthcare system. And she wound up helping them, guide them through that, because she worked in the healthcare world. She worked for a company. So she wound up doing that with them as a volunteer. So we will ask the parents, what are you looking for? What do you need? And then we'll go out and find it. But to say something specific right now, it's very different. Like, we had a family recently, or a volunteer recently, say, hey, I would love to help someone with an HVAC system, because sometimes there's things that people need.
Listen, we just got our new HVAC system.
Yes.
That was very complicated.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's a big deal. And when you're trying to manage a new child in your home, plus your children, it could be something like that. Like, it's not always resource for the child, it's resource for the family. You know, we can't get to that. Like, or, you know, we talk about this with our Love Box program, is they can't, if you mow their lawn, like, you drive up to their house and you're like, ooh, they could probably, I know someone who could landscape for you. How great would that be? It takes something off their plate so that they feel like they can continue to do that good job. So yeah, there's many resources. There's, like you said, Umbrella has a lot of resources. They're an amazing organization. We work with them. We, you know, tell our parents about them. But it's other support groups too. We're actually trying to work on a support group. We have a book club, but we're kind of melding it into this support group for families to talk about trauma, to talk about how to talk to your teens. We just had someone come up to us recently and they said, I do this program for parents to talk to their teens. Well, that's for everybody, but specifically for foster care. Because, I mean, as someone who I have my own children, like biological children, but you know, sometimes you can't talk to teens. So what's the best way? So those kinds of things come to us, and then we, you know, send them out to our families depending on what it is.
I mean, it's true what they say. It takes a village to raise a child, and it's true what they say about supportive services. It's not always about the child. Sometimes with the best gift, it's really time, like the lawn, you know, and so on. And it's funny, even looking at, you know, with the kids here, you know, in our home. with the umbrella, sir, like with the umbrella, like, you know, you have to do your training, and we're, you know, we see that we go to, we're like, okay, well, those things don't apply. Specific services, a lot of those are, you know, most people don't realize it's, you know, dealing with some kids more challenging, and how do you address, you know, those issues? But how did you get into to all this?
Oh,
Like what
it
drove
was
you
a
into this
long
business?
journey. Well, I actually was on a nonprofit networking call. I was working for a nonprofit, and Cheryl Oliver, who started this chapter, came on, and I was helping elephants. I have an organization that helps elephants in Sri Lanka, right? Everybody would come on, and I would say, "Oh, there's human-elephant conflict in Sri Lanka," and then Cheryl would get on and say, "2/3 of children who age out of foster care wind up homeless, incarcerated, human trafficked, or worse." And that's what got me. I thought, wow, you know, elephants, yes, they need to be saved. The human elephant, that exists.
We need
but
the
this is
everybody.
happening right here in New Jersey. How can I get involved? So I was in a career change at the time, and they had a case manager position available, a part-time case manager position. So I reached out to Cheryl. It was like 6 months later after I had met her, and I said, "Hey, would you hire me? I don't have social work experience, but I have relationship experience. I was in sales and marketing, and I had long-term relationships with my customers." I said, "I could do this." So she hired me, and I cried. It was a part-time case manager position. And I remember sitting there in my car when they told me I got the position, and I cried because I knew this is what I was meant to do. I was very passionate about it. And flash forward a year later, we were able to hire an executive director. So I'm the first full-time employee, actually.
And was there like an eye-opener case for you where you were like, okay, I heard about this on the radio or TV, and then you're living this real time, and you're like, oh wow, this.
Well, there's some movies and things that have come out. Like there's a movie that they make us watch, and it shows the whole experience of foster care. Yeah. But also, I think I was mentioning you before. I worked when I owned the child care facility. There was a child who came in, and I watched him go from this toddler who was just happy-go-lucky to getting very frustrated because the state they would pick him up at a time, you know, he'd come to the daycare, he'd just be settling in with his friends, and then they would come pick him up like an hour later, like in the middle of playing.
And it's a big difference, especially when those kids they have to go to visit their biological parents.
Yes.
So when they go to a visit and they come back to the foster home, I mean, they are a complete different person.
Yes, because it's hard for them. They don't understand. There's too little to understand what's happening. So they're like, okay, there she is. Now she's gone. Now I'm with this other family. Now I'm at daycare. Now I'm leaving. I'm going to a therapy. And I just watched this happen to him. And then he wound up moving to an aunt's house up in Connecticut somewhere. He left us and went up to Connecticut. It didn't work out. Then he came back. So I got to see all of that. And I was like, I would be on the phone with the state and trying to just figure out what would be best for him. Yeah. And they don't have the resources. Once again, it's not, you know, sometimes they just don't have the resources. They don't know what's happening with maybe someone's picking them up here or the therapist is coming. So I was really an advocate for him. And I thought, what's happening to the rest of these kids?
What are you learning from parents coping through that, through, you know, foster parents dealing with the foster child going to see the bio parent and then coming back to the home? What have you discovered and learned through it?
I think it's just giving that child, it depends on the age. Mm-hmm. You just have to expect it. You know, there's also, when you come back, if you have ever been I'm a divorced parent. So when my son would come back from his dad's house, there'd be a change in his personality. Mm-hmm. And I just had to just go with the flow. I had to anticipate that that's what was going to happen and then just gear myself up for that, do the best I could to just love on them and make sure that they felt, you know, okay. And kind of like not... when there's the outburst or something that happens, they're not doing that to hurt
It's not
you.
personal.
It's not
personal. The best movie that we watched that prepared us for it. So we have a friend. Her name is Lily. And when the kids first came on, we had a challenging case or a challenging child who really tested the waters with us, but it ended up, you know, it ended well. And we watched this movie. It was with Matt Damon, I think it was.
Oh yeah, I forgot the title.
On the farm? Or they're doing
no, it's the movie about when the family gets like 3 kids and it's Meet the Fosters?
No, I forgot Meet the Fosters. I think that sums it up. Like fostering is with like a great ending, and how kids can challenge you. And she says, you know what, you guys are having a hard time. Why don't we all watch that movie in your basement, which is right here. We all watched it together. And it was after that day we were like, okay, we can live another day. And even though we've mentioned this in our podcast before, you know, we learn to think differently and to really close our minds and our thoughts and our ears to what's right and what's wrong, because there's no right and wrong here. Not right and wrong, but there's no right like fix to everything. Each case is different. It's so true. And yeah, and I remember our first major like breakthrough here was with our pool, and it was like after a visit, and we were like, you know what, like normally we would have responded differently, and we said, you know what, why don't we all just jump in the pool with our clothes on, and we'll have pizza.
Fun.
Yeah, and that's what we did.
And then that was like our major breakthrough with the kids.
Yeah.
And we did, and it was like we had a great time. Like, I mean, I was like panicking. I was having I was like, I walk inside, just like, go into the wood floors.
Yeah, you just gotta
It
go
ended
with
up
it.
well.
Let it go.
And you go
Let
with
it
it
go.
because that's what it is.
Yes.
It's like it's a stream and like wall of emotions. And I think that's what it boils down to. Fostering is just like a whirlwind of emotions.
It's a roller
And it's a roller coaster, and it really is the unexpected. There's no day is the same, and you really have to put yourself to the side and know that you're doing this for someone else, and really be, not be a selfish person. Like, it really has nothing to do with you. And at the end of the day, if the best thing is for this person to be with someplace else, then you were there to serve a purpose, and that was it. And I think it took us some time to learn that.
Yeah.
And to finish up, what would be your advice to someone that is considering becoming a foster parent?
Well, talk to other foster parents, people who have been through it, not people who are just going through the program like you are, because you're all new, you're all learning about it. Talk to other foster parents. We have people who come to us to volunteer, because I didn't mention before, but we match volunteers with the families or volunteers with the youth. And sometimes they're considering fostering, and it's the perfect entree. They said, I'd love to help a family. I'd love to talk to this family. And they get to experience what that family is going through by helping them and seeing what it's all about. So definitely speaking to other people who are in it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for spending time with us, talking to us. And are you a foster parent? Are you planning on becoming a foster parent? If you are, let us know how you're doing, how you're coping with it. How's your
you wanna
family
talk,
dynamic going?
We're experts now.
If you are planning on becoming a foster dad, if you have any questions, just make sure you hit us up on Instagram, Daddy's on Duty, Facebook thread as well. And also follow New Jersey Angels. Make sure you go onto the website, discover any information, see how you can help this amazing organization that is doing very, very beautiful and wonderful things. And obviously, subscribe to Daddy's on Duty, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching us and for listening to us. Kim, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.